what is a token and how does it relate to vibe coding?
That is such a good question. A token is the basic unit that LLMs operate in, be it input or output. Tokens are not always the same size. Tokens are not a word, and they're not a sentence. It's kind of like something in between the two. On average, one token might be about 3/4 of a word.
I think the way to think about this is like, what are large language models doing? It's like fancy autocomplete. And so you feed it some tokens, like some pattern of words or some pattern of symbols, and then it's spitting out other tokens on the other end. Folks who are new to this, what do we mean when we talk about generative AI?
Generative AI is inferring a response from its training data and from whatever context that you give it. So it's going to take your question, it's going to break it down into a sequence of tokens, and it's going to do some fancy math, look at the data that it has, and then spit you back a response, which is going to be a little different every time. They're inherently non-deterministic.
That is a great point. Another phrase that folks will hear about is Retrieval Augmented Generation, or RAG. Could you talk about that?
LLMs are being trained all the time, but a particular model has a certain cutoff date for when they stop being trained. Often there's a pretty big lag between that and when they actually go into production. If you're asking a model a question, its training data might have been cut off a year before. What do? We augment the response with additional context. So RAG, or Retrieval Augmented Generation, just means augmenting your LLM inference with additional data from any source that you want.
That you have retrieved.
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
What is a context window?
Context window is how many tokens a large language model can use at one time, either for input or output.
I think watching context windows expand over the last few years has been fascinating. You can do so much more, and you have such fewer constraints now on how you use these tools when that context window is so much larger.
And if you're ever like vibe coding along and your agent is like, oh, we need to compact this conversation, that's what happened, is it exceeded the size of the context window. But luckily enough, then it can go and compress the conversation into the most kind of relevant parts of that, so you can carry those over into a new conversation.
What is token maxing?
Token maxing is when you use as many tokens as possible. I guess the assumption there is that more tokens is better. It's making you more productive. And I don't necessarily know if I believe that's the case.
There's interesting aspects of the economics of generative AI here. I think that the token maxing thing is just an interesting phenomenon of not exposing users to the true costs of the inference that's happening.
Totally. And that kind of goes back to our earlier point about how tokens aren't always the same size, because there's a lot of cognitive load as a developer to try to predict how many tokens is my response going to use.
I think over time, as we have more exposure to the true costs and we feel more of the scarcity of tokens, and as we gain a better idea of sort of a taste or an intuition for when these tools are effective and when they're not, we'll probably have a little bit more discernment about which tasks are worthy of the expense of tokens and which are not.
Yeah, that's a really good point.